everyone. We are from BlackStorm Consulting. So thank you, Meet Taipei, for the invitation, and thank you, Harvey, our co-founder over there, for organizing this, as well as like H Capital and other partners who are attending and watching this video. Okay, so I'm Jeslin, co-founder of BlackStorm Consulting, and this is Paddy. We are in Singapore right now. So Paddy, would you like to say something?
Just to add on to what Jeslin mentioned. Unfortunately, we are stuck here in Singapore, not able to travel over to Taipei. I still remember last year we were also invited, and we held a couple of sessions, including Triple I, including Meet Taipei, and also met quite a lot of wonderful founders. So this year, unfortunately, none of us can be there, but hopefully that the next few minutes to share of what we understand, what we know, and will be useful for everybody too.
Today, we are going to share some insights about doing business in Southeast Asia. So we have been, working with a lot of clients in various industry in this region. So if you have any question regarding Southeast Asia, feel free to ask us, okay, and via any other methods that we will show later.
Okay, let me do a short introduction of who am I. I'm Paddy Dunn, Singaporean. One of the co-founders of BlackStorm Consulting. I started my own companies as early when I was 17 years old, and throughout the whole journey, been buying and selling companies, and also managed to exit a couple of them. So throughout, I have seen a lot of tremendous growth in Southeast Asia, and this is also where we, together with my co-founders Jeslin, and also another of my co-founder, Shelby T. We started this company, BlackStorm, with the intention to help companies to expand their business when they arrive here in Southeast Asia markets, mainly Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and of course Indonesia, Philippines, and a few others countries in the region.
Yeah. So prior to this whole pandemic situation, Paddy and myself, we traveled to Taiwan quite often, and only last year we actually went to Meet Taipei too. So I myself actually started with working with Paddy as an intern in previous company called Interventure, where we spin off BlackStorm Consulting. Okay, so at BlackStorm Consulting, we are based in Singapore, but we have office in Thailand as well as Taiwan. Basically specializing in scaling businesses in Southeast Asia. Okay, so there are various type of businesses. It could be as small as like startups, okay, all the way to SMEs, MNC, as well as government agency that actually reach out to us to help them to scale certain businesses under their care, things like that.
Yep. Yeah. So far in Taiwan, we actually work with a couple of government agencies and also some of the accelerators who help startups and even some of these SME or SMB to scale their business to arrive here. A lot of strategy planning, a lot of manpower resource in terms of talents management to train them up, and also most importantly is to ensure that when they arrive, the strategies that has been planned out can actually be executed together with us.
So today we are going to share some, finding some numbers that actually help you to plan a little bit when you are, trying to enter this complicated region. Okay, Southeast Asia, although many people see it as one market, is actually quite fragmented in terms of like culture, in terms of like infrastructure. There can be a wide differences. Okay, like for example, if you look at this case, to set up an entity in Southeast Asia, like in Singapore, it takes you around 2 days. I mean, for the first 2 days is the common average number for the foreigner. Okay, but for a local, you can actually set up the company like within a few, maybe an hour. Okay, it can be done online, things like that. But if you want to set up like a bank account, things like that, then that will probably take a little bit, not more than 2 days lah, unless there's some complicated issue. Okay, so if you look at other countries, right, you can see there's a vast difference because depending on the infrastructure, also depending on where it is located. Sometimes it could be because of some, it could be a political issue where due diligence is needed to actually check more on the foreigner who actually set up the company itself, or sometimes it could be a lack of like someone who actually speak the language of a foreigner. Okay.
Yeah. So just to add on, looking at this slide, setting up an entity, this is actually very important. If let's say, for example, if you are a Taiwan-based company or Taiwan-registered company, and when you want to come over to Southeast Asia, whether is it for fundraising, or is it that companies are not going to be invested, and your strategy to enter into Southeast Asia and different countries. It is always very important that when you set up, especially a holding company, where are you going to be lending on, and then what are the tax and what are the legal implications. So which is why some countries, when you set up a company, it actually takes longer than usual.
Yeah. Also, depending on which industry you are in, sometimes you may need to buy a shell company that have like a long history of operations, especially when you are working with like government agency. So if you want to do some bidding for some government projects, that is important for you to take note of. Okay, so in this slide you can see these are some of the requirements when the capital that is needed to set up a company, as well as the local director. So if you look at this, for most of the countries at this moment, to set up a wholly foreign-owned company is possible, but the requirement may be different. Like for example, if you look at Malaysia, okay, yes, you can set up a fully 100% owned foreign-owned company, but the initial capital is actually quite significant for some. So, but although there is some additional options, like for example the LIC that you can see at the bottom. So if you sign it out under this scheme, right, you can actually don't need to put out too much like initial capital. So it's around $1 if you go via that scheme. Yeah. So for Thailand, there are also some scheme that is more for the foreigner, like we call it Board of Investment (BOI). So this is something that you can actually find out more because although this can allow you to actually own majority as a foreigner, but this actually take longer time than opening up a usual entity.
So if any of the companies they are planning to be setting up in any of these Southeast Asian countries for fundraising purposes and all this, it is always important to understand that what are the minimum requirements, because when your company is going to be invested, you have to ensure that the investors coming in is going to be investing in your company, in the newly registered company. There will be probably a holding time, a holding period. So it is also important to understand what are the legal implications, so that to ensure that you actually meet the criteria of whether is it a minimum one shareholders or minimum one director.
So in terms of taxation, this is important if you are doing fundraising. Sometimes you may hear investor telling you that okay, you need to set up a company in Singapore. So many of you will probably was wondering why Singapore? Why must I set up in Singapore when the market is actually in Malaysia, Thailand, or other countries? Okay, where the markets are bigger. Yeah. So the reason, which is the common reason, would be because the capital gain tax is actually 0%, which is similar to Hong Kong. Okay, so this is also one of the reasons why Singapore is actually a very investment friendly area. Okay, so if you look at the tax, right, for the corporate tax in Singapore, 17%. So this doesn't mean that any company actually need to pay 17% tax, because there's actually a tiered system. So for the first few years, when you are operating here as a new company, you do not need to pay such a high amount. So for GST wise, right, only if you are earning, or you expect yourself to actually earn more than $1 million SGD, taxable income, then you need to register yourself for GST. But however, if you are doing importing, right, if the amount is actually more than $400, you have to pay tax. So this is something that you may want to take into account when you are doing business here.
Yeah. So regarding the capital gain tax, this is important, especially if you are a startup or even if you're SME, and somehow along the way you want to raise funds, whether is it for your projects or for your shares. It is also important that when you arrive and you set it up here in Singapore, whereas the capital gain tax may be zero, but you also have to take into considerations of where are the shareholders, so that should there be a sales of the shares, what is the implication that the existing shareholders may actually be subjected to in terms of the tax also. So it is always important that when you come over to Southeast Asia, first and foremost, understand which country are you going to be setting up, and then which country are you going to be operating from. So all these will have an implication of your profit and loss at the end of the day.
The few things that you probably want to take note will be the like whether there's any special treatment for SMEs. Sometimes there will be grant or subsidies for foreign company and also for local company. Okay, and is there any incentive for certain industry? Like for example, in Thailand, there's this industry 4.0. So for certain industry, there is actually special treatment in terms of like incentive, in terms of tax exemption, things like that, and tax holiday.
Yeah. Lastly, look at the standard GST or the VAT rate lah. It is very important. Should your manufacturing is actually in Taiwan, and you intend to send from the Taiwan over to, let's say, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, or even Cambodia, do check out the GST, because goods coming in and then goods going out will actually affect your costing, will also affect your selling price also. So take note, the standard GST may actually varies different from countries to countries. And especially if in countries where they may give you rebates, maybe because of green recyclability. So always make sure that you hire someone local that is able to work out the accounting systems, and then to understand which are the areas that you can probably get rebates, especially when you're talking about delivering manufactured products or goods in process also.
So if we zoom in down into each of the countries, so we are picking 3 countries that is they are quite common among Taiwan company. So Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand. Okay, if you look at Singapore, the business structure is we actually have a lot of like MNCs here, and GLC stand for government linked corporations. So Singapore, we have a lot of like GLC supported companies. So especially those like core industry. A lot of them, they actually have like funds in terms of like investing in foreign companies. Like for example, Grab is actually one of the big example. So Grab is actually it's actually like Uber that have car sharing as well as the delivery stuff like that. So they are growing very big in Southeast Asia. It's positioned as like a Singapore-based company, but it's actually originated from Malaysia.
Yeah. So one other things that you may look at, other than the business structures, benefits, and also challenges, if you are a startup that's looking to do fundraising, you may want to consider as in Singapore instead of other countries. Partly it's because of in the past previous years, Singapore government have taken out quite a lot of initiatives to attract investors to be residing in Singapore itself. Also, putting money to get accelerated international accelerators, incubators, venture builders to be based in Singapore, and to actually allow the ecosystem to be built up. And because of the work done for the past 5-10 years, it has been a very interesting markets for a lot of investors to look at. Partly it's because our country is small, and there are already a lot of startups, a huge pool of startups. They are readily available to be funded. And at the same time, because of different stages of fundraisings and different stages of exits, so it becomes a consolidation is also much easier. So this also means that if you are planning to be based here in Singapore, whether are you going to shift your holding companies here, or you're going to be a subsidiary. So if you are one of those that is looking to enjoy a lower tax, capital gain tax zero, and also to get a larger pool of investors, then this is where you probably have to look into setting up a company that is actually targeted at these potential groups of investors.
Yeah. So another thing to take note is Southeast Asia, in terms of IP, intellectual property, right? The laws, the infrastructure may not be so well developed, except for Singapore. So if you are bringing your technology over here, so maybe you have to consider things like licensing to your other entity in other parts of the Southeast Asia and keep it in Singapore, or you can do it in your home country and license it over to serve this Southeast Asia region.
Yeah. So for companies that actually plan to have open up an IP or have a patent, you can also look into some of the offers or some of the grants that are issued by the government. I mean, it varies from time to time, but there have been quite a lot of companies that actually benefit from it by applying the patent here locally for the US market or for the Europe markets. And in between, they can also get some grants and some supports from the government and also from the private sectors.
Yeah, so due diligence is actually very, very common over here. Most of the time, information will be checked twice before, like, be it investment or be it doing business with you. So they will do due diligence. So it's very common that they probably will ask for some details from you.
Yep. However, in Singapore, take note the Singapore is actually well known as a fine country. Fine in the sense that it's actually very strict. So strict in the sense that a lot of people will probably need to be prepared, even though it may be very fast, very efficient. But do take note that certain filings are still required as part of the compliances, especially where Singapore itself, we have a lot of free trade agreements. And there are a lot of compliance that need to be done between many countries, and if not on the international level. So it is also important to understand that the cost of living is actually much higher than a lot of surrounding countries. For those who have been to Singapore, you probably will know that it is almost impossible to do an apple-to-apple comparison. Partly it's because of not only the cost of living is high, but the standard of living is also high. So that's why in terms of the hiring of manpower, all this may prove to be a challenge.
If you look into Malaysia, Malaysia, there are a lot of like SMEs. They are mostly, the economy is mostly supported by SMEs, also large family conglomerates, like bigger companies lah. Yeah. So in terms of technology wise, right, technology is more behind some of the, especially Singapore, in terms of the development of the technology. So when you are dealing with them in terms of like integrating your technology over there in Malaysia, so maybe you have to pace accordingly and look at the structure of the company before you need talk to them on this.
Yep. So also another thing that you may want to take a look is that as a country itself, Malaysia is huge. Okay, so we have the Malaysia is not just a location just above Singapore. They actually have East Malaysia and West Malaysia, and because of the population itself, the opportunity is actually definitely a lot. Especially if you are looking into areas like agriculture, where the population is growing. And then even the numbers of major cities are also much larger than Singapore by many times. So opportunity-wise is definitely much more if you are looking into areas of where potentially the growth is actually still happening. So despite what may happen for the past few years in the political scenes, but the potential is always there. So that is why lots of investors and lots of companies are always looking into Malaysia as the growing, as a market to grow further.
Yeah. So although there are actually a lot of supports for SME in terms of helping SME to grow from the government, but because of the political stability, in recent year there might be some changes. There was some changes here and there, which can actually create some instability for some businesses. So, like for example, we actually have partner in Malaysia. Because of the recent change, they actually may lose like millions dollars projects. Yeah, so that could actually happen for people who actually work very closely with the government.
Yeah, one way to mitigate is actually which is very common of some companies that we work with. The Taiwanese companies that they will do is that they register the company here in Singapore, and then they seek for partners and they look for partners overseas. So that means they have the control in Singapore with the manufacturing coming from Taiwan, but at the same time work with local partners in Malaysia and also in Thailand. I think everybody will probably know that in the recent years, there's a bit of political changes. So some of these actually helps them to mitigate, and also to ensure that the challenges that they face are much lesser and also probably even manageable also.
Yeah. So if you are in the consumer space, right? One thing that you have to take note is a huge proportion, a majority of them, they are actually Muslim in Malaysia. Okay, so in terms of what you are offering, if you are targeting the the Muslim market, so you may want to take note of some of the cultural practices, things like doing for advertisement. You probably don't include anything that is like dog or pig, things like that.
Yeah. So another thing that companies can always look at, especially for Malaysia, is that for the past few years, there have been a lot of fintech related companies that they actually open their branches in Malaysia, partly to serve the underbanked and also to serve the unbanked populations, which are majority of them actually work from these surrounding countries, where they got the work permits and everything. They actually work in Malaysia itself. Malaysia as a country is huge, so they have a lot of constructions, agriculture, fisheries, and all this. So this is also something that you may want to look at if you are in the fintech business.
Okay, the last country that we will zoom into will be Thailand. So family business over there is very, very common. In fact, we actually work with a couple of them, whereby they own listed company in Thailand. But most of them, they are by family. Yeah. So depending on how you work with them, most of them they actually speak Thai. In terms of English, literacy may not be as high as Malaysia or Singapore. But usually it should be okay in terms of like doing business over there for the language wise.
Yeah. So Thailand as a country itself is actually very interesting. So they always welcome good quality products, and at the same time welcome technology to come in. But however, as what Jeslin mentioned, language may sometimes be a challenge. So it is always important that if you were to bring your products or bring your services to a country like Thailand, there is a need to do a lot of localizations. The population is big. In terms of the customers, in terms of the clienteles, can be pretty sizable. But it's always important that you need to have localizations. So localizations can also benefit the companies quite a fair bit, but it also means that it's actually much more hard work. And because of this, it is also a country that a lot of Taiwanese company will usually look into entering it later. But because of the understanding of the culture, may be a bit of a challenge to a handful of the local Taiwanese also.
Yeah, so there's actually a sizable number of like Chinese over there, but Chinese over there they do not necessarily actually speak Chinese. Okay, most of them they still speak like Thai or certain Chinese dialect. Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing for sure is that as a country itself, Thailand is in the growth stage. Okay, especially where they have a couple of initiatives in terms of smart cities. So as you may know, Thailand itself is not just Bangkok. There are many other cities, and a lot of these cities are actually gaining in terms of the populations. And so this also allows companies that in terms of the IoT space, you may actually want to look into it, especially if you are into these electric vehicles, IoT, or even artificial intelligence. A lot of the initiative is taken up by the government agencies that they push to have a bigger adoptions in terms of the technology. So if you were to compare Thailand, Malaysia, or even Singapore, each and every one of them are growing in different phases. So for Thailand itself, they have been pushing a bit more in terms of the adoptions for smart cities, smart initiative, solutions, and products and all this. So for Taiwanese companies that we have been working with, a handful of them are actually looking into the AI IoT or AIoT, okay, to bring it over to work with the government agencies or even to work with the private sectors.
Yeah, so for the challenges, right, one of the thing is sometimes it may be quite hard to actually read, the culture of these people. It's pretty high context in the sense that, most of the time they probably would not say no to you in front of you. Okay, so Thai people, they are very nice. They are it's actually a land of smile. So everybody smile and may not actually tell you that they actually do not agree with you on the spot. So it's very important for you to read between the lines. And the culture is actually pretty complex over there. And a lot of them they actually based on business has been done based on connection. Okay, so relationship is very important over there, and it's very common for people to actually ask for some commissions after linking you up with someone else. Okay, it's basically quite a common practice over there. Although some people may see as okay, would that be corruption? Especially Singaporean, for if you're working in a company, a bit proper corporates, and you are actually getting some commission at the side, as an employee of the company, so that could be deemed as corruption. Okay, but in Thailand, it's actually quite common, and sometimes it's actually they can openly do it.
One other thing that if you're a Taiwan company that's planned to be based in Thailand, you may want to look at there is actually access to CRMV. If you notice under benefits itself, CLMV simply means that Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam. A pandemic aside, but there have been a lot of trips that is being made by all these countries. When there are a lot of high volume of transactions, high volumes of import and exports. So Thailand as itself is actually pretty strategically located. So if you are looking into whether is it sourcing or is it selling products, Thailand, especially based in Bangkok, it will actually provide you quite a lot of access to all these countries like CLMV. Okay, so in these slides, we will talk about what does BlackStorm do and how have we been helping companies, especially to enter into Southeast Asia. So if you look at it, 1, 2, and 3. So let me start off with number 1. In terms of capabilities, that's the common needs from our clients. So this also means that we ourselves have a clearer understanding, have a deeper understanding of how to function, how to run the business, especially for companies who are looking to scale into Southeast Asia. Just to mention, Southeast Asia itself is made up of not just 1 or 2 million. Just in Indonesia itself is already 270 millions of populations. Then plus the rest of the other countries, we can actually hit easily much higher in terms of the populations. And then we are also talking about countries that are made up of different languages, different cultures, and of course, most importantly, is different ways of doing businesses. So what we do here is that our capability is that we are able to actually understand the markets pretty well. So in terms of the market entry, how to scale into it is something that we have been doing for years. When we talk about market entry, it's not just about a typical consultant to tell you, hey, this is how you enter. That's not how you do it. It's not. It's that we actually do the execution for you. So that means that we represent you, we execute. And then we have people on the ground. We execute. We close the deals. We establish the whole entire partnerships and relationship. So that's actually in terms of how the market entry is being done. Of course, there's also pre-entry advisory. This actually happens with a couple of companies in Taiwan, listed and probably even large established enterprise. So before they want to enter into the market, we are talking about probably even a niche market. So they will need a lot of advisory on which are the tactics, which are the strategies for us to actually on how to enter. And also a couple of other things. When we want to enter into a country, you don't just replicate whatever that you have in Taiwan or in the host country and then just bring it over and expect the thing to work. Usually it doesn't, and you will probably even end up in disaster. So this is where we actually come in. We look into a couple of things. Number 1, we actually work in by training the people before there's actually any skilling. So like we train the people, make sure that the management have an understanding, the mid management have a capability to provide supports, and so that when anything that is going to happen, when we land in that particular country, let's say we land in Malaysia or we land in Singapore, there is already an infrastructure that's already in place. There's already procedures. There's already a certain level of standards of communications that could have already been established. So this is where our part comes in to ensure that the restructuring is suitable for you to enter into a particular market. And then subsequently, when you're running on your own, the whole entire connections, the whole entire relationship can actually be continuing from there.
Yeah. So in terms of programs, right, we have a couple of programs. In fact, recently we actually have a program with IPS, NCTU, 交通大学. Okay, so with the accelerator over there, where we bring 3 startups over to Southeast Asia. Over in terms of virtually, where we connected with some of the partners over here, working with them with a couple of projects that are still ongoing. Okay, so for virtual business launchpad, we actually have 4 total batches right now within this year. Yeah. So the second virtual entrepreneur launchpad will be more for individuals who would like to set up a company, okay, who are, still, maybe quite unsure in terms of, what are the, how to actually set up a company, or maybe have some ideas, but, need some help in terms of like conceptualizing things like that. Okay. So for accelerator, we also work with GCAM, which is Triple I, one of the projects, where we bring 5 startups over to Finland with our partner. So they went over there to have an event. Actually, we did some business matching over there in Europe. Okay, so for MBA, Multinational Business Alliance, we will talk about it later in the next few slides. Yeah.
Yeah, so coming to number three, learning resources. This is actually most useful when there are founders or even the top management or mid management that actually plans to enter into Southeast Asia, but they themselves are actually not quite sure whether are they internally are they ready or maybe externally are they able to get the support and even to do the execution properly. So this is where the learning resources comes in. We have a platform. This is actually part of the venture builder that we actually build it up and we spin off. It's actually a platform, xpreneur.com. You can actually log in and take a look. This is the part that we have people from all over the world. They can be both mentor, they can be both consultants, where they can attend private webinars, private workshops, and any founders who are interested to learn more. They can even self-taught. So that means that they can actually self-learn on the content and materials that have been prepared for them at their own pace. And they can have any questions that they are not quite sure, they want to know more, then this is where they can book a consultant or book an expert and then to be able to give them insights. So one of the few things that is very popular is that if they want to enter into certain markets, which can be pretty niche. Let's say, for example, they want to go into agriculture. They may have IoT solutions, but they want to enter into the agriculture markets of, let's say, Malaysia, but they're not quite sure because agriculture itself is very broad. So are you talking about agri-tech? Are you talking about managing of the soil, the materials, the ingredients, or whatsoever? So this is where they can actually find experts on this, and then to even understand that how a company can actually be set up, how a company can actually be structured. So this is the part that we also provide, and especially with this pandemic, it actually allows more users to have a better understanding without actually having to leave the country and to talk to someone who is on the other side to get a better insights and how to get things done also.
Yeah. So in fact, we also have a few resources. So this is one of the resources that we are actually working. We work with Zenru, which is the next speaker of keynote session, Business Sentiment 2020 for the Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand, whereby we use the social listening, data, social media data, things like that to actually come up with this report. You can scan the QR code to access to that page. So in Taiwan, we also are very honored to be one of the founding members of MB Alliance, okay, together with two other partners, STOM Consultancy, which is very, you have 20 years of experience in terms of like doing marketing consultancy for a Taiwanese company. Yeah. So Align Group is actually based in Singapore, but they have entity in Taiwan. Okay, so doing HR consultancy, things like that. So we are more focused on the scaling and market entry in Southeast Asia. So some of the supporting members that we have are Age, doing the investment advisory. You can feel free to approach Harvey for that. Spark MP5 for the PR portion, as well as 4B Studio.
Okay, these are just, you can probably just run through some of the clientele, some of the partners that we work with. It's actually pretty much from Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, from Indonesia, Philippines, even some of the companies that actually comes from as far as Russia, from US, or even from Taiwan also. So we also work with quite a handful of private investors who wants to go out to identify up and coming potential clientele also, potential startups, potential companies that they can even look into on putting some investment into it, but at the same time to help them to structure their business to be better.
So we have this line group whereby for most of the events we will actually gather the attendees over there for any post-event discussion. If you have any question, you can ask us. If you have any announcement in terms of the events that we have, stuff like that, we will also post it over there. Okay, you can scan this QR code to join us and also email us for that. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much for having us, and thank you to everyone who actually spent time to listen to what we shared. So should you have any questions or anything, just feel free to contact us or talk to our partners, Harvey. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much.